pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Tell about Ohio Flynn and Rhode Island
There's a scoop here and I can smell it. Or they haven't invented deodorant soap yet, but there's still a scoop.
Fine, but I want to see pictures.
I won't let you down.
Someone around here is bound to know something about the lost temple of Watchadoon.
Watchadoon?
Exactly. We don't even know if it really exists.
Oh, it exists all right, and I know where to find it.
Go on.
Isabella Garcia Shapiro, femme fatale, ingenue, amateur archaeologist, and licensed tile and grout installer. A girl has to earn a living.
Pleased to meet you. Do you know anything about this?
The amulet of Watchadoon. The legend says it can awaken an evil corn colossus with the power to destroy the world.
Makes you wonder why ancient people were always making stuff like that. I mean, what's the upside?
My mother, New Hampshire Garcia Shapiro, was searching for the temple when she disappeared. I'm afraid something terrible has happened to her. You just gotta help me. I'm also a certified damsel in distress.
Well, we don't normally go searching after other archaeologists/adventurers, but I guess we could make an exception. Now, if we only knew which way she went.
Would this map she sent me help?
Yes, it would. We're gonna need transportation. Rhode Island Fletcher, I know we're gonna dig up today.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and also ArmchairOscars.com. Here with my co-host, who is wisely keeping his eyes shut, the critic, dare I say legend, from TalkMovieMe.com, Mr. Doug Heller. How the heck are you today, sir?
It ain't the years, sweetheart. It's the mileage.
Welcome to our annual trek through Spielberg's filmography. We do this once a year. We take a Spielberg film in July, and because who else to talk about in summer but Spielberg? I mean,
well, yeah.
And we've talked about several of his films so far.
Yeah, we've done Jaws, Close Encounters,
Mm-hmm. E.T.
E.T.
Yeah.
This
and
one
we did, and our very first episode was on Jurassic Park. So we're kind of also working our way through his fun movies, because once you get to Schindler's List, it gets serious, and
even his fun pictures are like kind of dour.
Kind of dour, yeah. And it takes him a while to get a fun picture back. Mm-hmm. Once Schindler's List happens, because he starts with the Shoah Project, and Schindler's List becomes, finally the critics are kind of, I don't want to say nice to him, but
the Academy was finally nice to him.
The Academy had nominated him.
The Academy had nominated him out the wazoo, but they continuously left him out.
Right.
Shutting out. I mean, The Color Purple was big. We like you enough to nominate you, but not enough to award you.
We like it enough to nominate the movie 10 times, but on Oscar night,
it's not going to go home with anything. Yeah, exactly. And they did that with Jaws. They nominated the movie, but not him.
Yeah. And he was nominated for Close Encounters. Lost to Woody Allen.
Yeah.
He was nominated, and he was nominated for this.
He was nominated for E.T. too.
And lost to this. And lost to Richard Attenborough. Yeah, he lost E.T. to Richard Attenborough.
Yes.
He lost this to Warren Beatty for Reds.
Yeah.
But I think the thinking was, and I get this from a lot of critics, the movie made so much money and was so successful that the voters thought that the movie didn't need it.
Yeah, I've heard that argument before.
And I think I've heard the same thing about Star Wars too, that they thought that, well, this movie made more money than the number 2 film did by $200 million.
It was actually the gulf between it and second place could be filled by all of the totals from second through 10th place.
Right.
And there would still be a gap.
Right. But Spielberg had revolutionized the business and had made them fun again, because the early 70s were not a lot of fun for movies.
No.
It was that auteur era where everything was dark and serious.
Yeah, gritty, and yeah, it was.
Everybody was kind of flailing, and he created the summer movie season with Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to kind of tell you where he was at this point, because this is 1981.
It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. We're doing this one this year because it is celebrating, and I'll say it out
40th
loud,
anniversary.
its 40th anniversary. Yeah, I was trying to see, because I'm the same age, and it took me a long time to be able to admit that the 40 was a number that I could reach.
This movie came out June 12th, 1981.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was 4 months and 6 days old.
I was 9 years old. And my brother took me to see this because he had seen it twice, and he said, "You're going to love this." You have to understand how unusual that was for my brother to want to take me to see anything.
Older brother?
Yes, of course. And he was excited about this movie. Everybody was excited about this movie. But let's talk about where he was at this point, because Spielberg, he came out with Jaws, and that shocked everybody. Because it was a doomed production that inexplicably turned out to be one of the most profitable films of all time. Then Close Encounters, which was a big, slick production, but still, created the Spielbergian glow. And then 1941, which...
Yikes.
Yeah. He,
There's a lot wrong with 1941.
He showed a group of people the film, audience, normal people. And he opened that film with a parody of the opening scene of Jaws. And people were laughing their asses off. And he said, for the next 90 minutes, nobody laughed at anything.
Because nothing else is funny.
It was too big. It was too big, too broad, too over the top. It didn't work.
Yeah.
This could have, if this movie had not worked, it could have killed his career. Because this was kind of a comeback. And then what follows is E.T. What follows is Temple of Doom. What follows is The Color Purple. What follows is a brilliant career, But, and also I should say, this was for him and George Lucas. This was their James Bond film. Because he was thinking about making a James Bond film. And George Lucas called him and said, just hold off, I may have something better. And he did. I want to say, when I saw it, I was 9 years old, and this movie scared me to death.
Yeah. I think I saw this when I was 7 or 8, maybe. But I didn't really remember. I remembered Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade. I watched those two a lot. Raiders, I hadn't gotten a chance to see really, and until I was in high school. And it's
well, and I wrote about this on my website, that you can feel George Lucas and Steven Spielberg making films that they would want to see. Are films that they did see as kids, and just bringing a bigger budget to it, slick production values, what have you. And so when you see this, you realize, that's how I would be. I would want to make films that I would want to see. I would make films that would entertain me. I understand that Richard Attenborough had a passion for making a film about Gandhi, but it's not a movie I would particularly want to see. You
No,
know,
and it's not a movie that I've returned to very often.
me neither.
I think I've seen Gandhi 3 times,
I've seen
maybe.
Gandhi twice.
It's good.
It's a plate of broccoli.
Yeah.
It's good for you. But this was just so much fun. And it gets the movie is so tightly written too.
Mm-hmm.
More than the ones that follow it.
Oh, very much so. Well, that's because wasn't it Lawrence Kasdan and Lee Brackett?
Oh, Lawrence, no. It was Lawrence Kasdan, and I think George Lucas came in and tightened it up.
There were, well, let me look.
Lee Brackett was Empire Strikes Back. But
Oh no, Philip Kaufman. I'm sorry.
Philip Kaufman, yeah. Yeah, because Lee Brackett died years before.
Yeah, not well, like a year before, maybe 2.
When I was watching this the other night, I was just, kind of taking, an analytical look at it. That opening scene has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
No.
But you're glad it's there.
Well,
It's like this little short film that just right at the beginning to kind of give you an appetizer as to what
arguably,
you're
I would
into.
say, yeah, it
What you're-
gives you it's kind of an amuse-bouche for the rest of the movie.
Right.
It gives you everything you need to know about Indy
Mhm.
right away.
He's a survivalist.
Uh-huh. And
Um,
he's clever.
He's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because as you've said many times, nobody takes a punch like Harrison Ford.
Nobody takes a punch like Harrison Ford.
And it's kind of in that tradition. He looks a little bit like, kind of the Humphrey Bogart look.
Yeah.
He's got the stubble and he's got the hat and all of that stuff. And it's all ridiculous, but it works.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the guy who he's got this bunch of guys who are following him into the jungle, and every single one of them is either running away scared or dying because they have betrayed him.
Yeah.
2 of them betray him before the movie even gets started.
Yeah.
One of which is Alfred Molina, who had never
Dr.
made a film
Octopus.
before. Yes, who had never made a film before.
Mm-hmm.
Who does not make it out of this scene.
No.
But the scene that scared me.
The poison is still fresh 3 days.
The scene that scared me, and first of all, this is baffling. When he finally goes into that cave, I have yet to figure out how that trap works.
The break in the light?
Yeah.
Well, there's no real way they could do that.
I sent this to MythBusters several times, and they I sent this to MythBusters several times because I wanted to know if it would work. It's basically a trap that is set off when you put your hand in the sunlight. Now I'm thinking, okay, this is only going to work for a couple of hours during the day.
Right. If you go in at night, what?
It's a solar-powered spring trap.
Yeah, go in at night and probably good to go.
And it never occurred to me. This just happened. Just occurred to me the other night that the guy who's on the spikes when he trips that little trap is the guy that preceded him.
Mm-hmm.
His competitor. It hit me.
I think that was when I watched this the other day. I think that was the first time that I noticed that he said the guy's name when he was putting the sand in the bag.
Forrestal.
And then when the thing came out, and he goes, "Oh, Forrestal."
Yeah, because he mentions him before.
Yeah,
but it's all set up to be fun. You were talking about yesterday. I was kind of startled when you were watching the movie and you mentioned the colonialism in this scene.
Oh well, yeah. So here's
I have
my
an answer to this.
here's my whole premise, and I can't take full credit for this. I did read this somewhere, but Indiana Jones is as much a villain as Belloc is because he's only a hero in the white colonialism sense because he's taking valuables and religious artifacts from indigenous people and putting them into white persons' museums.
Mm-hmm.
And he's basically robbing them of what they hold dear and saying, no, this belongs to white people to study, not to you who made it.
You know, but I had a my rebuttal to that is simply this. If you've got a guy who's willing to go into a cave full of tarantulas and is accosted by a giant boulder, a bottomless pit, and poison darts, and can make his way back out with it, give it to him as a consolation prize because, I mean, my God, what he's been through to get it. It's the world's biggest double dare trap. I mean...
True. But those traps were put there for a reason.
How do you worship it? I mean, I guess you have to figure out how to get in there to worship the thing. But to set all this up, you have to be the most sadistic monster. Okay, if the darts don't do it, let's dig a bottomless pit. And if the bottomless pit doesn't work, we'll set up a giant boulder. And if the giant boulder doesn't work, we'll make it so that when they grab it, the whole thing falls apart.
This is, of course, after the spikes shoot out of the wall.
Right. You can't put logic to this. You know?
From a strictly representational point of view, it's a difficult watch when you kind of look at it in the way that, you know, I kind of, now that I look at it, and the fact that he fails
Mm-hmm.
all 4 times we see him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the running joke. He never gets to keep it.
Yeah, it kind of makes it a little bit better, and he is trying to stop in 2 or 3 of them it being used against a larger population.
Yeah.
And yeah, because he never actually gets out of anywhere with anything.
No, he doesn't keep the fidelity idol. He doesn't keep the Ark. He doesn't keep the stones. He doesn't keep the Holy Grail, and he doesn't keep the crystal skull. Right. He loses all of them.
All of it.
Because that's not the point.
Right.
If he kept it, then I don't think the movie would work. If he kept any of this, or if he
it went to the museum to be studied, and he became famous for discovering and recovering this and all of that. Yeah.
And he is the hero in that he does the right thing, because in the second one, he could keep that stone.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He doesn't want to. It doesn't belong to him. I would like to think that he went into this cave to get the fertility idol. I don't want to think that he gave it to somebody, or he wanted to give it to a museum. I think he wanted to give it back to the people.
No, he came back and was talking to Marcus and said, I had it in my hand. It should be in a museum, but I did get these other pieces.
He didn't say that. He said there's only one place he can sell it.
Right, there's only one place that Belloc can sell it.
Right. But he wasn't going to put it, he didn't say he was going to put it in a museum. He said there's only one place he can sell it.
Then why was the museum paying for the expedition in the first place then?
I don't know. But the way I saw it was he was trying to keep him from getting it.
I saw it as because he talks about, you know, and they talk about that the Ark should be in a museum being studied as well. How in
the world would you study that?
So much. Well, I guess the first round you would find out that you shouldn't open it,
Right.
and then the second team of scientists would learn that you shouldn't open it. And then
Well, here's the thing. Is he's brought into this mission. It had been years since I'd seen this, so I was kind of surprised. I hate exposition scenes. I can't stand scenes. I can't
these are
stand
the greatest exposition scenes ever
right,
written.
right.
Ever written.
I can't stand exposition scenes where they set everything up and they tell you what's what needs to happen, and then it happens. This is the exception.
Right. He literally explains, oh, the staff of Ra is this, and it has this. And what does the Ark look like? Well, unfastens,
it's in this
unfastens,
book.
Looks. Here's an artist rendering of it, and
Here's Ralph McQuarrie's rendering of it.
Yeah, let me tell you the history of this and how this all came about. And it's so natural because they're literally telling people in there. It's not like two people who always go into the same scenario and then decide to tell each other the rules.
Right.
When you can tell it's their 30th time doing this. It's like,
right.
No, this is ridiculous. Why are you telling us this?
It's kind of like in Titanic, at the very beginning of the movie, there's a computer simulation of how the ship sank. And that explanation orients your mind to what's going on. This does the same thing. You know what it is. You know what they're looking for, and you know where it came from. And so you're oriented for the rest of the movie about what he's looking for and why. Because these are two army guys who have intercepted a message that this is what they're looking for. And they don't say Ark of the Covenant. They say Tanis. Yeah. And so they know what Tanis is.
Well, they didn't know what Tanis was.
Well, I mean, they asked them. They asked Brody and
let's
Indy.
not forget that that one of these is the ill-fated Jack Porkins.
Porkins, yes. William Hootkins, who's an American, but boy, if you ever look up his picture on the IMDb, it's
he looks like he was raised in East London. You know, like he looks like he would be related to what was the guy that played Vernon Dursley?
Yeah.
They look like they could be related.
He does. He looks like he's outside of an English pub.
Yeah.
But
I think it's the hair.
It might be the hair and the hat. But and he's also Lieutenant Eckhart in the first Batman movie.
Yes, he is.
But it's just interesting
Which
exposition.
coincidentally was our second episode.
Yes. It's interesting, and I mentioned Bogart. That was Maltese Falcon was our third episode.
Yes, it was.
Somehow we'll work Ghostbusters into this. But I was sitting there last night just absolutely floored by it because of how it's constructed. Because if the movie had opened with this scene, it wouldn't work. No. You've got to open with an appetizer. And that scene in South America is the appetizer. It gets you warmed up. It whets your appetite for what's coming.
It's identical to a Bond opening sequence.
Right.
It's, here's an action sequence to get you into it, but you don't have to remember anything about it because we're not going to talk about it ever again.
And then M calls him into the office and explains what's going on.
Right. M calls him in, berates him for whatever we just saw, and then says, "Well, whatever. We have another mission for you."
Pay attention, Bond. Yeah. But again, this is like structured like a Bond film in that way. What I missed watching this as a kid is exactly what is happening, because the whole plot dealing with the Ark of the Covenant is not just to steal the MacGuffin.
Right. It's to prevent the Nazis from getting it, and if it exists, they're trying to prevent the Nazis from getting it because legend has it that it had destroyed cities and laid whole areas to waste, and uh, they say, just I think the last line in that scene is, "Whatever army carries the Ark is invincible."
Mm-hmm. Right. But not only that, there's something deeper as well, because this object is Jewish history.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the chest that carries the Ten Commandments. That moment when Moses came down with the Ten Commandments and the world was changed.
According
essentially.
to myth.
It's
yes.
According to myth, yes, of course. And, well, even putting this into the common bloodstream, because the idea is that this ark not only carries so much history, but also the soul of the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. Something that is in danger of being perverted by Hitler.
Right, because this is 1938.
Right. And Hitler is at the top of his power.
Mm-hmm.
This is before the United States gets involved.
Right. This
officially.
This is 3 years before even the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Right. So they are steamrolling over one country after another.
Yeah. Well, no, wait. No, they hadn't even invaded Poland yet.
Yeah, that was in 39.
Yeah. So yeah. I think this is in 38. I know that Temple of Doom was in 36.
Right.
And I think this is 2 or 3 years after that. So regardless, the world is kind of like, maybe we should pay attention to this, but it's not really a big deal yet.
The news was, and the world was just sitting by waiting to see what Hitler was going to do next. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Europeans were fascinated by him because they were sitting there going, this man goes into every country and wins everything.
Yeah, and it had nothing to do with strategy, brilliance, or anything like that. It was just sheer numbers.
Yeah.
Sheer firepower.
Yeah.
That's
an influence.
It was the stupid. All he had was a lot of firepower, and he just put everything up front and drove his tanks in.
And he had charisma.
People couldn't. I mean, just militarily speaking.
Yeah.
The Blitzkrieg itself was just, let's get all of our heavy firepower, put it in front, and just drive.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. That's how they got Paris. That's how they got Brussels. That's how they got Poland. That's how they got Czechoslovakia. That's how they got everything. And it was just those pincer movements, those straight down the line, take them out with the most firepower you can, and roll over the rest of them.
Which is how he got Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Which is how he got
the
France.
Single clumsiest military strategy you could possibly imagine, yet it worked time after time after time after time.
France, Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland, I mean, just one after another. And the world is scared to death of him. So you add this element to this movie of, you kind of go in with that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You add this to his, the threat of Hitler, and having this object with a weird supernatural power, and the army that carries an ark before it is invincible. And so you think about that, and you think he can do exactly what he wanted to do, which is take over the world. And so they hired this man to go and help find it.
Mm-hmm.
What I like is the very interesting thing to me is that the Nazis' go-to guy is a Frenchman.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't know if France has been taken over at this point, but that's really interesting.
Right now, if this is 38 or even the first half of 39,
Mhm.
because didn't they invaded Poland in June
Yeah.
of 39?
I'm not sure
So
when they invaded France. Or when they marched into
It
Paris.
was long after that.
Okay.
Because they went east first,
Mhm.
took Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, that kind of those areas in the Baltics, and Austria and all of that, and then made their alliance with Italy, and then started to push west with the aid of the Spanish.
It got so bad that um, when they started to move west with the Spanish, it got so bad that the Roosevelt administration got nervous,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that South America could be used as an inroad for Nazis to get a hold on the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, and he was right.
And he was right.
Because there was a lot of despots at the time that were like, "Oh yeah, if you can give us money and guns, we'll let you come over here. We'll let you. We'll be Nazis, sure."
So
Argentina, oof.
they developed the a good neighbor policy.
Yep.
The Roosevelt administration did.
It is the
So
reason that the Magnificent Ambersons is butchered.
Yes. And it is also the reason why during the war years you don't get a lot of really it's why you get a lot of Latin American inspired films from Walt Disney.
Yes.
Because
Well,
he
then
was
there's Walton El Guapo.
Yeah, El Guapo. He was sent to South America on a goodwill tour, a handshaking tour.
Mm-hmm.
And he made films. That's how he came up with Saludos Amigos.
Right.
And The Three Caballeros.
Mm-hmm.
A little racist for the time for now, but
yeah, and
but
what was it?
That was their purpose.
Right. And I think was it the Secretary of State Rockefeller?
No, Nelson Rockefeller.
Nelson Rockefeller sent Wells down to Brazil to shoot a film, and that became, in 1993, It's All True.
Mm-hmm.
RKO wanted it buried. They were trying to kill his contract.
Mm-hmm.
They were taking 45 minutes out of the Magnificent Ambersons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To an hour. So oof. Oh, that makes me sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why the Nazis are the reason that Magnificent Ambersons isn't complete.
Yes.
That's one more thing we can blame on the Nazis.
As if there's not already enough.
Yeah, as if we were running out of things we could blame on.
Right. Well, here's the thing. The Nazis are the last group, the only group now that you can't actually feel any pity for. Everybody else, you can sort of see a human dimension now. You can portray them with a human dimension. You can't do that with Nazis.
No.
The closest they ever came was Wolfgang Petersen's Das Boot.
Right, and even that wasn't asking you to sympathize. It was just asking you to see.
Right. It wasn't... and even the captain in that movie, the Jürgen Prochnow character in that movie, was not part of the cause. He was just doing his job.
Right.
You know, he hated Hitler and he hated the cause, but he did his job.
Mm-hmm.
So even that had its distance.
Right. And boy, that's a movie we should do.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just wrote about that.
The 4-hour director's cut too.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wrote about that film. That's incredible.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in ages.
But the Nazis in this movie, I don't know if they are portrayed as they were, or if I think the portrayal of the Nazis are more akin to how Hollywood portrayed them during the 40s. They're more stereotypical.
Yeah.
I think if you want more realistic, you go to Schindler's List.
Yeah.
You know, something like that.
Yeah, Schindler's List especially, yes. Or I guess Saving Private Ryan to a degree, but that was just soldiers shooting at each other. They regardless of ideology at that point. That was just...
They're here, they're just kind of goose-stepping. Just kind of...
right, they've been probably drafted into the service, and they have no choice but to be there.
Well, and, you know, the one Nazi has the line, only our mission for the Fuhrer matters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got those blinders on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, because in Schindler's List, one of the things that's been pointed out is that the character that Ralph Fiennes plays is a psychotic.
Yeah.
He's a mentally deranged man.
Yeah.
Whose station in the Nazi party is allowing him to be, to kill and murder while being the commandant of this camp.
Right. It gives perspective to the crazy, over-the-top, murderous, sadistic villain of the 80s.
Right.
Because we just talked about Highlander 2. And I had seen that, and I had seen
Highlander. Why you gotta bring that up, man?
And they were just so far. I mean, it was just Michael Ironside just had this gleam in his eye whenever he saw a person. He's like, I gotta kill him.
Yeah.
And this guy, the SS guy,
mm-hmm.
it's how you do a sadistic, over-the-top villain and make him scary.
Right.
Because even his coat hanger is terrifying.
Yeah. This guy, it's interesting. He's just this torturer. I love when he first encounters Marion. She won't give him the information that he wants, so he tortures her, and she says, "I'll tell you everything." And he says, "Oh, I know you will."
Yeah. He hasn't
but I'm
started
gonna torture
yet.
You first.
Yeah, he hasn't started yet. He says, "I know you will because what I'm going to do to you is going to make sure that you do."
Right.
Of course, ignoring the fact that most information released under duress is false, just to get you to stop hurting them. But you know.
Yeah. But that's not the point.
Whatevs.
Let's talk about the romance.
Oh God! If this, look, I love Karen Allen and Harrison Ford.
I do too.
The two of them together actually gave me hope for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull until they completely undermined her character and underwrote her and made her a screaming damsel in distress instead of, being herself. Their dynamic is incredible. Like the only other person that had chemistry like that with Harrison Ford on screen is Carrie Fisher.
Yeah. They're so good together here that I was like you. I was really hoping that the romance would be played up in Crystal Skull. It's not. But the only time that it really sparks is when they're talking about what happened to their relationship,
mm-hmm.
and he talks about all of his other girlfriends, and he says they all had the same problem. She says, "Oh yeah, what's that?" He said, "They weren't you."
Mm-hmm.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, but it also made you look back on that fantastic boat sequence when it's like, "Oh, that hurts. Where doesn't it hurt? Here. Here's not so bad." It makes you look on that in revulsion because now you know that produced mutt.
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching that and I'm like, oh, I used to think this was sweet.
Well, it's not their fault. That's not their fault.
No, it's David Koepp's fault. Anyway,
I do like. I'm sorry. I do love his response when he finds out that the kid is his son.
Yeah.
You're going to school.
Yeah. School is overrated, and you're going to school.
Because that's what a college professor would say.
Yeah.
But I love characters with history.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand characters that just come in and you just feel like it's an actor in a costume. No, this guy has history.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he deflowered her and he broke her heart to the point that she was so brokenhearted that she moves to Nepal, opens a bar and has drinking contests with the natives. I mean,
Okay. I want to talk about this.
the drinking contest.
Not just that, this whole sequence, because, okay, first and foremost, we have to remember that it opens on her and this opponent basically finishing up their, 20th shot?
Mm-hmm.
So she goes from that, she closes up, she can still walk.
And she's not drunk at all.
No. And then proceeds to have that knockdown, drag-out fight. When the barrel is shot, she takes another shot.
Mm-hmm. I would.
How on earth is she not just blackout drunk?
All I can figure is he must have been a real lightweight. That's all I can figure.
But there were all those glasses that were already turned over. I don't know. I admire her.
She must have an iron constitution, man.
Her liver must have not been real happy with her.
And she drinks a lot in this movie.
Yes, she does. So
her last line in this movie.
Yes, get a drink. Yeah. So I want to talk about the editing in this because I didn't know this until I saw this.
Oh my God! Yeah. Who was the editor?
Michael KANE.
Michael KANE. Yeah. Brilliant.
So, brilliant. But the prop guy screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
When you see Indy shooting, in the beginning, when he puts the gun in his suitcase during this fight, it is a 6-shot long-nosed pistol. It's a .38 caliber revolver.
Right.
He shoots 6 times. You see him go to reload. The next thing you know, you see him shooting a .45 semi-automatic pistol that he didn't have. And then that goes away, and then the revolver comes back for the rest of the movie.
But if you were a kid watching this in the theater for the first time, would you have noticed that stuff?
I didn't notice it, and this was probably the 30th time I'd seen it.
30th time you've seen this, yeah.
The thing that I thought that was funny about it, and I realized in the moment why they did that.
Mm.
They did it so that they could keep shooting him without him having to reload.
Yeah.
Without having to show him reload. And
of course, that would have been funny anyway.
Yeah, keep the whole thing going because it's all basically the way that they did that scene, I would be hesitant to imagine that they didn't do that all in one take.
Yeah.
Each having to go back and reset it completely each time.
Mm.
Although that might have been hard with the fire. I don't know.
Yeah. That's an exciting scene.
Oh,
this
gosh.
movie listen, once he gets out of that, I mean, this whole thing just rolls along.
It's the only PG-rated movie I can think of that has a headshot with blood.
Yeah. Yeah. On screen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Right? Center screen. Like...
Blood trickling out of the mouth.
Wow, he's on fire.
I would have expected more of... There's a really kind of creepy shot where you see Indy and somebody is shot to death. And you just see a shadow on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually creepier than the guy getting shot in the head. Because you don't see it.
Yeah.
You know. But what's interesting to me is this scene is not necessary.
No.
It really isn't. He could have just gotten the medallion and left. But they keep going. They keep trying to one-up themselves. In every scene in this movie, they keep doing that.
The funny thing is that when you watch this, 3/4 of this movie doesn't actually need to be there.
Indiana Jones doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Because
everything would have proceeded exactly as it had. They might not have even found the Ark.
Look, I figured this out years before the Big Bang Theory came up with this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The movie doesn't need Indiana Jones, narratively speaking.
No.
Because they just trash her bar. They find the medallion, they find the Ark, they open it up, and everybody dies. Mm-hmm. The only caveat, the only thing is they might have taken it to Hitler and opened it in front of him.
Or they might never have found it because they would never have discovered the Well of Souls.
This is true.
Because the
but if they had the medallion, they would.
Well, yeah, if they had the medallion.
But I mean...
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't need to be there because they would take it to that island, wherever that island was.
It's in the Aegean Sea.
Yeah, and, all the people would have just died. Nobody would have known they were there.
The Ark would have been sitting there.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm glad he is because he's a great hero.
Oh,
Harrison Ford is just wonderful here. Mm-hmm. I don't think he got enough credit for this. He did not get an Oscar nomination for this.
And he probably should have.
And he should have, really. Because he's not just the pawn in the middle of it. He is, especially when you compare him with Han Solo. Mm-hmm. He's older. He's more laid back. He's a little more beaten up, physically and emotionally.
Yeah.
I mean, every 5 minutes in this movie, he's getting beaten up by something. Either beaten up or nearly killed by something. Mm-hmm. But I love the clockwork of this movie because I kept thinking back to Stargate, the movie Stargate, which drove me crazy because they were trying to figure out how to open the Stargate, and James Spader comes in and writes it on a chalkboard, and they open the Stargate in the first 5 minutes of the movie. There's no time to discover anything.
Yeah.
There's no time to really get acquainted with anything.
Well, because bear in mind that is a Roland Emmerich movie, and he needed to get to the blow-ups.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. I mean, well, this movie needed to get to the blow-ups, but the generosity of how this thing is oriented, the fact that he reconnects with her because she has the medallion that they need, mm-hmm. and the fact that they are digging up all over Egypt because they only have one half of it. Mm-hmm. And all of that is exciting. Mm-hmm. It's the object to get to the object. And he figures it out because he has them. It's just, I love how tightly written this is.
Yeah. This is the best because it is the tightest narrative.
Right.
There are the places where it goes wrong for Indy mm-hmm. are organic.
Yeah.
Whereas in Temple of Doom, they're forced.
Mm-hmm.
Even a little bit in Last Crusade, all of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is forced.
Last Crusade, narratively speaking, is a little bit messy because the larger story doesn't matter.
No.
The point is to reconnect him with his father. Mm-hmm. That's where the story is.
Yeah.
It's not with the Holy Grail because we don't really care about that. This one, we do care about the Ark of the Covenant. And the reason for that is because this is presented as another character. Mm-hmm. Because from the moment that it comes into the story, it has its own theme music.
Yeah.
That I don't know if you noticed this, but the first time you see it, it's in one of Indy's books. And the moment they look at it, the theme starts. Mm-hmm. And as they get closer to it, the theme gets more and more insistent. Mm-hmm. And it gets louder and it gets more pumped up. So that by the time you get to the end, and it turns into a horror score.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it plays that John Williams plays all the way through this movie as building up this character of the Ark as this object made of death. Everything around it. When he goes into the Well of Souls and he finds it surrounded by snakes, you know, it's surrounded by snakes and Nazis and just all of these objects of death and all these warnings. You know, don't go here.
Right.
Don't do this. Leave it alone. This is dangerous. It's in the dialogue.
Right.
No one knows its secrets. You know, and Sala says it is not of this earth.
Right.
And it's so interesting because just the way they present it in the music, in the editing, in all of that stuff. It overturns the idea of the MacGuffin because it's really not a MacGuffin. It is the center of the story. It's the central object that they're looking for, but it has a purpose. It's not like...
Yeah, but if they never found it, it wouldn't really change anything.
Well, it would change the ending of the movie.
Well, it would change the end of the movie, but it could still be an exciting ride if they never actually found it.
But you got to admit, when you see it, it is...
Oh, yeah.
It's striking.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I want to... I found this. Temple of Doom is set in 35. Raiders is set in 36.
Right.
And Last Crusade is in 38. So all of this takes place before the Nazi invasion of Poland, before World War II starts.
Okay. Because that's really when, I think the invasion of Poland is when the world really realized.
That was when France and England declared war.
Right. So that history is overriding this movie. And it's hanging over this whole film.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as it plays out. And I'm fascinated by it. I was watching it again last night, and I'm just fascinated by it.
It's, you know, it is unparalleled fun. And just, like, even as I'm sitting there noting...
And not superfluous fun.
No. See, that's where everything in this movie is there for a reason. And it's one of those instances where, you know, if there had been an actual love scene, if this had been like a more maturely rated film, and
which it should have been.
Yes, it should have been.
This, I think this helped usher in the PG-13.
I think The Last Crusade was the first PG-13 movie.
No, Temple of Doom. Because it started, the PG-13 was inducted in 1984.
Box says PG.
For this?
Temple of Doom.
Temple of Doom? Well, I think it may have been the PG-13, I think, was a result of Temple of Doom. It's because that was kind of the firebrand. That was the one that everybody said, okay, you know, we need a new rating.
Right.
You know, because was. I personally think Temple of Doom is a hell of a lot more violent than this.
Oh yeah, I always thought that that they didn't do PG-13 until the late '80s.
They did in 1984. Because I thought it was Dreamscape, which that movie's a piece of shit. Let's see. Hold on a second. Let me look this up. First PG-13 movie. Red Dawn. And that was in 84.
In 84, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought Red Dawn was rated R.
No, PG-13. That movie holds the world's record as the most violent movie ever made.
It's also a terrible movie.
Yeah. It's very Reagan era. It's set Reagan era paranoia.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's what I said. It's terrible. But here's the thing. We were talking about this before we started. the other movies, and I like them all for different reasons. Even Crystal Skull has good moments.
It does.
They're all good for different reasons for me, personally.
I agree.
I think there was a lot of criticism for the second one, and I think the problem with the second one is that it could never match what is here.
That and
It's a little racist.
Yeah, it's racist. It has a lot of just it's kind of misogynistic in its portrayal of Kate Capshaw, and it's so much darker that people really questioned whether it should have been a family film. Because,
nobody more than Steven Spielberg himself.
Right. Well, George Lucas was divorcing Marcia at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
That's why it was so dark.
But Spielberg said later, he said, I went too far on that one.
Yeah.
And it's hard, watching the movie, it's hard to disagree. But now, this one's pretty violent, too.
Oh, this is very violent.
It's very violent.
Propeller guy, anyone?
Yeah, well, didn't actually show it, but...
you still got that blood splatter, though.
Yeah, still got that blood splatter. And God, every action scene in this movie, and I noticed this again last night, every action scene, even the most violent stuff, is taken up to 11.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, let's use the music, let's use the editing, let's use all the tricks of our trade, and make this faster and the most exciting thing you've seen. And that's in every single action scene.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a dull moment here.
No.
I don't think.
No.
And then you get to the ending, which I got to talk about, because this still sends me out of the room. I'm going to admit.
Really?
It's still, I'm almost 50 years old. This still sends me out of the room sometimes.
I have always loved this and the Kali Ma, the heart scene in Temple of Doom. The
Temple of Doom I can deal with, but this is a little more.
I'm pretty cool with it. Weirdly,
yeah.
When I was a kid, anything that was that gross would had scared me. But when I saw this, I was okay with it.
And when I started studying film history, I realized the gore in this scene is typical of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because...
and Steven Spielberg had just figured out that melting thing that he wanted to use this, and then in Poltergeist, and then in...
Right. Right. You know why he did it? Because he could.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You know why he did it? Because $42.2 million on his last picture. That's why.
Yeah.
$142 million. That's why he could do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movie he could pretty much do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah. And it worked.
And it worked.
As he goes on, the more times he gets to do things that he doesn't have any inhibitors on, they tend to go south very quickly. Yeah. Always, Amistad, The Lost World, Ready Player One, Hook.
There was that period between after Color Purple and before Jurassic Park when, he made Empire of the Sun and Always, and it just was not a good time for him. And he was producing more. Mm-hmm. And the stuff that he produced was a lot better. He got into television, which really didn't work, because that resulted in Amazing Stories. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And
first ever use of computer-generated effects, the stained glass window night.
Yes.
Amazing Stories.
No, that was young Sherlock Holmes.
Was it?
Yeah. Created by a brand new company out of Southern California called Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was not a good time for him. And but I'm going to use this because one of the movies he produced at that time was Goonies.
Ugh.
R.I.P. Richard Donner.
Yes.
Yeah, who just died this week as we're recording this.
Yeah.
I
wish you would have brought his name up with a much better movie because I hate the Goonies.
I think if I were a little younger,
an intense passion, I've hated it since the '80s. I've never liked that movie.
I think if I were a little kid, I would have enjoyed it. I was a teenager by that point.
You would not have, because I was a little kid and I didn't enjoy it. Wouldn't that come out in '86?
So let's just say Superman, The Omen, the Lethal Weapon pictures.
We don't really have to mention The Omen.
No, they're still good.
Are they?
But the closing scene of this is so great. It's so great because the movie earns it.
Yeah.
It's like, we all know how we feel about Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And we know how we feel about the Nazis in this movie. And, Spielberg is Jewish, which might have something to do with it. I know that this scene was constructed by George Lucas. But it's just interesting that you get down to that, and it rewards the audience with having the Nazis die,
like not
badly.
Not just die, but oof.
Die and get sucked into oblivion.
I mean, they were first. The soldiers are electrocuted or whatever, and then the three jackasses in the lead get their faces melted.
The visual effects, I'll say this, 40 years later, the visual effects are a little dated.
Yeah.
They still look good.
Yeah.
It's those optical effects, and practical effects and things like that. And I think given the spirit of this film, given where its origins, it needs to look a little cheap.
Well, that's true too, because they were doing this to imitate those shoestring budget serials from the 30s.
Right.
But the way I always love it when they cut to a dummy. Not just in this, but in anything old, because it's so obvious, especially if they decide we're going to show their faces.
Yeah.
Like the Alfred Molina dummy on the spikes.
Oh, it's so bad.
It does not look a thing like him.
Oh, it doesn't look a thing like a person.
No. And then with the faces melting, just the obviousness that it's like stuff on a stick, on styrofoam on a stick, But I also like that when they went back and restored this, the only tampering Spielberg did with it was in the asp den.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of a reflection off of the glass that was protecting Ford.
Yeah.
That they digitally removed to make it look like it, that there's no protections there.
Yeah. I'm glad he did that. I'm glad that was. Yeah. I'm glad that a little cleanup is fine. I would not have been okay with a George Lucas retrofit like he did with Star Wars. I would not have been happy with that.
If he had tried to do anything like that, because they're Spielberg's films, and they're not.
That's probably why he didn't do it.
Yeah, they're not known as George Lucas films, like all of Star Wars, regardless of whether he had anything to do with their direction or not, because his
Mhm.
executive producing, he was the creative person there, regardless of whether it was in
He
the
and George were the
directorship.
creative force.
Right. But George isn't as connected to Indiana Jones as Spielberg is, because
Right.
Spielberg's name is on the directed by.
But the film is still under Lucasfilm,
Oh yes.
which is strange because does Disney own this?
Yes.
Okay, because it's not on Disney Plus. It's
No.
on Netflix.
That's because it's also a Paramount film.
In that case, it should be on Paramount Plus.
There's probably licensing due to the fact that it's Lucasfilm and that's owned by Disney.
Hmm. That's odd.
Yeah, so they do own it because they're making a fifth one.
Yeah.
It's in production now. Harrison Ford just hurt himself on production, so you know
Yeah,
it's
there's
going
stills of
about
it.
as well as The Force Awakens did.
There's stills of it on
Yeah, they
the IMDb.
just got released. Yeah.
Yeah. I probably don't need it. I would like to have.
I'll be happy if it's good.
I'd like to go out on a good film. I'd love to go out on a great film. But
Spielberg's not doing this though, is he?
no, it's being directed by somebody else.
James Mangold.
James Mangold, yeah.
Ugh.
Okay.
And he wrote this, and Mangold wrote the screenplay too. Oh my god. Ugh.
I want, and I know I'm asking a lot,
Now I'm a little afraid of this one.
but what I want from Mr. Spielberg at some point before he leaves this earth is one more great, big, special action picture like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like he did with Jurassic Park, like he did with E.T., like he did with the spirit of those earlier films. I want one more before he hangs it up.
Yeah.
Because I miss this.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jurassic Park was the last time that it ever really felt special. And
I would argue Minority Report.
Minority Report's really good. I haven't seen Minority Report in years.
I've recently seen it. I think we showed it to our son a few years ago. So I've seen it within the last few years. It's a magnificent film.
Yeah.
And so much fun. What Roger Ebert said about it is absolutely true. It's the reason we go to the
It's Philip K.
movies.
Dick.
Yeah. I mean, he said, this is the reason that we go to the movies.
Yeah.
Movies like that. And I agree,
I haven't seen it. I saw it the second time I saw it. I did a study in Spielberg, which a couple of years ago for my website, I went through all of Spielberg's films, and that was a fun journey.
That's a roller coaster ride right there.
That's a weird journey, particularly if you're watching 3 or 4 of them at the same time, and you'll hit 2 really great films and then some piece of crap that's been forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird to go between this and Close Encounters and land at 1941. Yeah. But again, I'll say this. I love this series, but none of the other films land like this.
No.
They're good, but they don't just... I was telling you before we started, it's like Temple of Doom feels smaller.
Yeah.
And then Last Crusade is kind of all over the place. Last Crusade really rises and falls with Sean Connery.
Mm-hmm.
It works because of Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And then Crystal Skull, God.
Yeah.
They waited too late.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a story that anybody could be comfortable with. It starts out, the first half of that movie is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Once they get to the jungle is where the movie falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have a strong villain.
No.
That's just me.
Yeah.
But
it has its moments, but I just looked at the stills for Indy 5, and there's cars in a castle with Nazi flags on it. It's like, did he go? Is he now older in the past? Like, what happened here?
Neo-Nazis?
Well, I don't. Did they? It looked like cars from the 30s, though. Like
The flashback?
maybe. I mean, nothing is known about the plot, so it's hard to say what it
Yeah,
is,
I mean,
but...
here's the funny thing. If you think the Nazis in Raiders are cartoonish, the ones in Last Crusade,
Yeah,
you're surprised
well,
they don't have come out of Roger Rabbit. I mean, come on.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Anyway, that's pretty much all I got.
yeah. I think that's all I have. You can find all of our back episodes. Oh, wait a minute. I'm launching into the end too fast. What are we doing next week? It's my pick, isn't it?
You're talking about Gregory Peck and the Gunslinger.
Oh, I love this movie. You've never seen it, have you?
I've never seen it.
Oh, I love this movie. I want to apologize in advance. Anybody who tends to listen to our episodes all the way to the end, it will be ended with an 11.5-minute Bob Dylan song that that specifically references the movie. So it's called Brownsville Girl, and strap in because it takes a while. I saw The Gunfighter because of that song.
Did you?
I found out what movie it was, and then I found it. It became like my second favorite Western after The Wild Bunch. So yeah, we're doing, because I usually do Westerns in July. It feels summery to me because it's out in the West and it's all dry and everything.
I have a pick for this month for a Western, but I'm not going to say what it is because I haven't seen it in decades and I want to see it again just to make sure that it's my memory is not,
Right. And then after that, my last pick for the month is actually two Westerns. High Noon and Rio Bravo. Not because each one of them doesn't merit their own episode. They do. I wanted to talk
they just
about
sort
it.
of complement each other.
Well, Howard Hawks and John Wayne hated High Noon with an absolute passion because he was asking people for help. And they thought that diminished the masculinity of the characters. So by 1958, 6 years later, they made Rio Bravo, where they explicitly reject all civilian help.
Yeah.
So it's a response film.
That sounds very right wing.
It was Howard Hawks and John Wayne.
Sounds...
Yeah.
I'm reminded of that American Dad episode where Stan refuses to ask for help and refuses to give anybody help, even when Haley needs the Heimlich maneuver. No.
Everybody has to do everything on their own. So I wanted to kind of, instead of talking about them individually, kind of talk about them as a conflicting duo, because High Noon is often cited as a leftist communist film.
Got Gary Cooper as Oscar.
Yep. It frequently is referred to as a socialist film, whereas Rio Bravo is a very capitalist movie.
In High Noon, he doesn't want to kill anybody. He just wants to go off and be happy with Grace Kelly. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, right?
Who wouldn't?
And, the Rio Bravo, John Wayne has the chance to go off with Angie Dickinson, and he doesn't. Like, that's just stupidity.
He prefers the horse.
Yeah. What the hell? Anyway, we'll be getting to that. I'm very much looking forward to all of that going forward. So to go back to where I had left off, you can find all of our back episodes at the podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can listen to us on iTunes and on YouTube. Hit the like, subscribe, and make sure you get the notifications. You can find us on Twitter at pod_bay, and copy and paste that and head over to Patreon if you will. We have a couple of exclusive episodes over there. It's the same handle, at pod_bay. I'm losing my ability to talk. I think that wraps everything up here. We thank you very much for listening, and the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
Say how-do to the Raging Cajun, Mr. James Carville.
Ah! Oh, jeez. Did somebody open the Ark of the Covenant?
Thank you, but I can't stay. It's Friday night. I've got to go to temple.
Temple? Ah, like Indiana Jones? Maybe now I won't give you the antidote.
To what?
To the poison you just drank. Quick, in here. You just pick it up already. Michael Eisner, cover your heart!
Kalima! 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 Whatever you do, Short Round, don't touch anything.
Okay, Dr. Jones, I no touch anything.
Indy!
Lady only here 'cause she humping director.
We now return to yet another Indiana Jones movie.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Elderly potheads. Why did it have to be elderly potheads?
Ah, here it is. Jack! Start the engine! Get the plane up! I'm going to sing the opening chase music from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Feel free to join in. He's being examined by top men.
Who?
Top men. Yeah, let's wrap this up. I got the director's cut of Raiders of the Lost Ark waiting for me at home.
A raft? We're not sinking. We're crashing!
Don't look, Marion!
Okay! By the way, I'm pregnant!
Maybe just one quick peek.
Don't you just sometimes wish they'd run away or get kidnapped and be made to work in a Temple of Doom? Na 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 na.
The insertion procedure will be performed by these South American Jovitos blowgunners.
Wait a minute. I don't want them shooting things into my vagina.
Well, perhaps you could tell them. If only you spoke Jovitos.
Peter, I think we forgot Meg.